Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 750 comedians and counting over the last 45 years. My guest today is the fantastic comedian Lily Phillips. Yes! Hello!
It's like we're really there. It's like you're a real audience member. This is so great for my self-esteem.
How are you? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Just at home, you know. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. I'm fine. I'm having a field day doing these wonderful interviews. I'm so delighted you're here as my guest today. The interview is going to be about an hour long, and it's going to be all about your comedy career. So I'd like to go right back to the start and ask, how did you become a comedian?
Well, what's the short version of the story?
We can have short or long, whatever you want.
Well, I was born and... No, I won't. That would take an hour. And people are bored enough, so they don't want to hear this shit from me. No, the short story is that I originally trained as a dancer, so
right.
Being a comedian wasn't in my plan at all. It never even crossed my mind. And I'm sure if you asked people I went to school with, or just told them that this is what I was doing now, they'd be like, "No, you've got the wrong person. That's not right. She's not funny at all."
No.
But lots of people say, "Oh, I was the class clown at school." Like, absolutely not. We had loads of boys in our class. It was like 25 boys and 5 girls, so they were all being really funny all the time, and the girls were just like in the corner just being like, "Look what that boy did, he's so funny." So it wasn't my plan. So I trained as a dancer, and I did that for about 6 years,
right.
and then I started a cabaret show with another dancer friend of mine who I trained with, because we were both a bit frustrated with dancing and weren't really happy. So we were like, let's make our own show. And it was really dance based then, because that's how we were trained. So there was like tap dancing in it, and we were singing, and Brilliant. It was all like very theatrical costumes. And then we sort of started to want to do something kind of funny and a bit more interesting and say something. We didn't know what we wanted to say at first, but we wanted to we didn't even say the word feminist or like empowering or anything like that. We just started to create our own stuff, and it started to sort of lead that way.
Right.
And I think we both really enjoyed having that creative control over what we were doing, having been dancers and just being told what to do all the time, and told just to be exactly the same as the person next to you. This is making me sound like all I want is to just stand out and be special, which is probably true. And then we did that for a while, and then we started writing our own songs, and then then she started a family, so sort of took a step back, and then I was like, okay, can I do this on my own? And so I started doing it on my own. I actually did it in Edinburgh on my own for like 2 weeks. And then I found basically when I had the stage to myself, I was chatting a lot to the audience in between all of the songs. That I felt most, and someone said to me, "Oh, you know those gaps, what you're doing there, that's stand up." And I was like, "No, don't be disgusting." And then I tried stand up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what I want to do." And then it just went from there.
Wow. So
that was long.
so no, it's fine. So what year was this?
Oh God, I don't know. What year was this? I've been doing it for 3 years. Well, 4 years now.
Right.
Including this pandemic year.
Yeah.
So 2017, is that?
Right. So fairly new, 3 or 4 years doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a blurred kind of introduction to it because I still tried to keep the musical element for a bit.
Right.
When I started doing gigs on my own, I tried to learn how to play the ukulele, which was really bad because I can't play it. Everyone's like, oh my God, the ukulele is so easy. It's so much easier than the guitar. And it's not. It's really hard. It's so small.
Challenging, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went around trying to do some of the songs just on this little ukulele.
Wow.
And then eventually just scrapped it and just did the stand-up.
So were you doing like 5-minute slots in pubs with taking a friend along, or how did you come about to actually do the comedy? Was it were you in a theatre? Were you in a tiny pub? What was it? Because it's all experience, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think from the cabaret scene that I'd done, I didn't know that there are all these open mic nights. Like whenever we did our cabaret, we usually put on the show ourselves and rented a venue and sold tickets, and it was all our own kind of thing because it was an hour show that we had. So I wasn't aware of just doing little bits all around London as a way of like working on your stuff. We just worked on the show as a whole. So I was introduced to this whole scene, and I think it means you can progress so much quicker in comedy and stand-up because it's just a clearer, purer form of comedy, whereas cabaret, people aren't really sure what it is, what category to put it in. There isn't. From my experience, someone might contradict me, but we found it harder. We did that for about 3-4 years, and I didn't achieve half of what I've achieved since starting stand-up because there's all these little gigs. But having said that, because I'd reached to a certain place in cabaret, I knew some people in the world that sort of overlapped. Yeah. So I did a gig, a stand-up gig before for Funny Women, who I'd previously done a cabaret gig with. So they knew me, and so they booked me, and I was sort of doing half and half. So that was sort of my first gig as a stand-up. And then I went to visit a friend of mine from cabaret in New York, and she's an amazing woman. She's in her 80s and she's doing stand-up comedy and all kinds of nonsense all over New York, talking about sex and just being just wonderful and amazing. And I stayed with her, and she basically was like, let's do some gigs around New York. And I was like,
what experience that was.
It was a baptism of fire for sure. I mean, I was naive though. If I'd have known what I know now about stand-up and how you should progress and how many gigs you need under your belt, for the experience, I would have said no. Right. But she managed to get me a gig at a Gotham Comedy Club in New York.
Wow.
And I was there for 2 weeks, and the gig was at the end of the 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my fucking God, like, what am I doing? So I dragged her around New York.
That is in the deep end.
To all these open mics where I just didn't know what I was doing, and I was just doing this little British me. But they like British people. Yeah. So you're already like a little bit further along. They're like, oh, she must be really smart because of the way she talks. So they already think you're quite cool, even if you're shit at comedy, which I must have been then. Anyway, and then it got to the gig at Gotham, and I'm like walking through the corridor to get to the gig. Right. And there's pictures of, Amy Schumer and Seinfeld on the wall. And I felt like physically ill, like I might actually just pass out and have to be taken away.
Was there not a cameraman there for you? That would have been great.
Oh, yeah. Well, they filmed the set, but the whole show was all about new comics. Right. But they kept telling us that because it's Gotham Comedy Club, often more famous comedians, TV comedians, will just rock up and try out some new material.
Right.
And they were like, so this is the lineup. At any point, someone could walk through the door and just do a 40-minute set.
Right, yeah.
So so you think about my nerves and my my state of mind at this point.
Calm.
I just don't know what I was thinking. I literally don't know what I was thinking. It's the stupidest thing I've ever done. And so, yeah, it's getting to like the person, I've waited for about 8 people to go on, and they've all been really good. And there's like 400 people. The place is full, and I'm regretting all my life choices. And then just before I'm about to go on, the worst happens. Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah.
He rocks up and starts doing a set, and I'm like, I just can't take it. But in the end, in retrospect, it was a positive thing because he just did 20 minutes. He didn't take the piss and go on for ages, because apparently the week before Seinfeld had come and done like an hour. And so anyone that went on after him, like a lot of the audience had left, and they were just exhausted. And he's obviously amazing. So they, laughed out. And Jim was amazing, but he just did 20 minutes. He just wanted to try a few bits, but he got the audience into a really great place. So in a way, he opened for me.
Yeah.
I went on after and just like lapped up all the like positive energy from him. So me, 2 gigs in, was like, thanks, Jim.
But of course, the experience, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was. And I looking back at the video, I think I was pretty shit, but it went well on the night, and people were kind and people were laughing. It definitely wasn't a disaster. And then I came away with a video from that I could then use, because she was like, you've got to get a video. That's what it's all about. Get a video. So
who is this woman?
Oh, she's amazing. You should look her up. You should do an interview with her. She's called Deanne Forrest.
Right.
She's amazing. I could talk about her for an hour. She's such a wonderful woman. She's just written a book, actually, about her life.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
What was your best and worst gig to date?
Probably that one.
For
both reasons. No, I mean, it was great at the end. I felt like I'd like jumped out of a plane or something afterwards. I thought I could do anything. Worst gig was when, again, I was really early on, and I, as you know, do a lot of full-on vagina period stuff.
I love all that. Yeah, that's it's fantastic. Yeah.
But I didn't know. It's just so relatable. I didn't know that it was like hack for like a woman comedian to talk about her vagina. Like I didn't know that people thought that. So when I was starting out, I just went so full on with all of that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I totally misjudged like how intense to go, how soon into your set, especially if you're just doing 5 minutes, like you need to ease them in a little bit. And I started one set it was just an open mic somewhere in London, and I started the set, I didn't say anything and just said, I'm on my period. And this guy in the front row immediately said, yeah, I can smell it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, how do you react to that?
Well, I was so thrown. And I don't know why I was thrown. Like, why was I surprised? If I'm going to start saying that at the beginning of my set, like, I have to expect some kind of response from the audience. But I was new. So again, I didn't really know how to deal with someone being that kind of confrontational that early on. And I think that's the difficult thing, is if you haven't really developed a rapport with the audience yet, they don't know who to side with, because all I've said is I'm on my period, and then he's made a joke and I'm like, oh shit, like I don't they might be thinking he's funny and I'm an idiot. I don't know what they're thinking because I haven't had time. So then I got angry, which you shouldn't do. No. And I muttered something about pulling my moon cup out and pouring on him. And that just made it worse. And then I found out, so, a lot of these open mic gigs, you've been to loads of them, a lot of the comedians are in the audience.
Yeah.
And it turned out that guy was a comedian that was going to be performing later. And then I found out whose side the audience were on, because when he did his set, the audience just did a communal protest against him, and just sat like that and just didn't laugh at anything. I mean, he wasn't funny anyway.
No,
but
of course not. No, he wasn't.
So I triumphed in the end. But
the reason why I asked the question is that the whole reason why I wrote the blog, I had a great long list of everybody I'd seen, and I thought I could write about all my experiences of watching them. And I've been to so many comedy nights where comedians have to walk out, and within a minute they've got to be either original, above all funny, or very endearing. And your line is extremely original for that gig, and that's what I like about it. It's like it is full on, and it makes you listen to what you have to say. It's a very good way of engaging with an audience.
Or alienating people.
Well, hopefully engaging with them. Did you ever find it difficult at all to break through into comedy?
It's tricky because I've had the cabaret experience and the dancing experience. Out of the three, this has been the easiest. And I don't want to say easy in a flippant way, because it's an incredibly hard career, and so much is based on luck. And I know so many talented people that aren't in the place that they should be, in my view. But for me, it's been, it's felt like I've been going in the right direction for the past year or so. And I think also it's because I have realized that it's definitely what I want to do, and I'm really driven and motivated, but those aren't just characteristics that I've always had. I have them with this. I didn't really have them with dancing, and that's just as a competitive industry. But I just, looking back, obviously at the time I didn't realize, but looking back, I didn't love it, and I didn't fight for it as much as I'd fight for this. So I don't know, it's up and down. Like, it's choices you make. It's being like, competitions have been helpful. I've been lucky enough to do okay in a couple of competitions, which don't always help your career, but have helped, because certain people have, like, I got an agent not from winning a competition, but just from one of the stages that I was at. There was someone there that then introduced. It was a kind of domino of events that meant I got an agent from it. But but I don't want to. That doesn't work for everybody with competitions. So I'm not sure. But for me, it's been good, and it's been a sort of steady moving forward for me. But I mean, there's ups and downs, of course, and most of the time I question whether I'm even funny and whether I should be doing this. But I've got enough encouragement along the way that hasn't made me stop.
I personally think you're very, very funny, and what I love about you is your confidence on stage. We've touched on it before. What do you like to talk about on stage? Do you have any themes? Do you have any things come to mind? Do you like to banter with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, themes, vaginas.
Well, there are themed shows.
But I really consciously want to step away from that. But
fine.
It does always seem to land in my lap. I mean, the whole stuff about my dog, all that stuff about her getting cystitis and the vet saying that she should get a labiaplasty is things that actually happened. So I got a dog because I was like, great, I'll have a dog, and then I can do dog jokes that are really relatable in general. And then this whole thing happened with the vagina. So I just feel like it's my destiny to talk about Fanny until I die. But actually lately I've gone into more like, my comedy's got darker, definitely.
Right.
The things I think about, they're quite, I was going to use the word edgy, but I don't want to sound like a wanker.
Right. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? A joke I wrote yesterday was about, just about death. And
yeah.
I did a joke about, I don't want to say it, because if I don't, it's really in the beginning stages, but it's about Great Ormond Street. So that's the way I'm sort of, things are going at the moment. But maybe that's just because we're in a pandemic and everyone's depressed.
So it's mainly, you would say, about everyday life and relationships and everything that happens to you, yeah?
Yeah, I think it always comes from something that's happened to me.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about it on stage, partly because you want to talk about it.
Yeah,
and it's a good way, comedy is a great way of kind of figuring out how you actually feel about something and what your point of view is and how strongly you feel about it.
Yeah.
So that, I think it does come from your life, but I think also it's you finding the funny in your life. And using comedy to make parts of your life that might be distressing funny and lighthearted, and sharing them with others, which makes you feel better, unless you share something that you think everybody else experiences and then they don't. That's always a worry in new writing nights, material nights. And you're like, really? Is that a thing? And they're like, no, that's not a thing. That's just
do you when you're on stage, how do you remember your routines? Do you have a method?
No, I say them out loud, so I'll just walk around my room reciting them, and I'll do it on dog walks, looking
Very
like
useful.
a crazy person. But then someone said to me, I'll put headphones in so it looks like you're on an important hands-free work call. So now I do that, and I think people think I work in like the city or something, because I'm just like always on the phone.
It's great.
But I'm actually muttering minge jokes to myself.
The reason why I asked that question is that, other than this blog, I think the most creative thing I've ever done, I wrote a play which myself and my friend put on for Comic Relief, and we put 3 shows on, and we got over $2,000 for them. It's this it's a half-hour play. It's called The Applicant. I might yet take it up to Edinburgh to see how it goes. And it's basically about me, who comes down to London from Carlisle, which is my home city, and I have a very successful girlfriend, and I can't get a job. So each scene is me waiting in a waiting room to be interviewed, and then the interview itself. And because I'm waiting in a waiting room, I see the audience and I start chatting to them. So I wrote monologues to set the story up. And of course, the first night I did it, I ran out and I forgot my monologue. After
that's the whole scene.
After all the rehearsal and everything. But it's fascinating asking the comedians the questions, because some of them have notepads, some of them write it on the hand, some of them record. And you just go. I'm fascinated how you go from point to point. You know, you must have markers or something. It's certainly doing an hour-long show.
I mean, I record myself all the time. Yeah. But that's mainly for. Well, I think at first it was about self-esteem and getting a real sense of what had actually happened when you've been on stage, because you can very often come off and decide that it was horrible and they all hated you and they didn't like any of your jokes. And then you can listen back to it and it actually isn't that bad at all. And there were some bits that they really liked. And so you can look at it, a day later and have some perspective. But that said, it can work the other way. So if I have a really good gig, I often don't listen to the recording just in case I've got the complete wrong idea about what happened. But it can be very useful, especially if you're working on something new, or even if you're not, sometimes something will come to you on stage that you haven't thought of when you're writing it all out, and you can't remember exactly how you phrased it, and you just need to listen back to that bit and make sure that you do that phrasing again, because so much of it is about selecting the right words in the right order and how you said it, that you need to repeat to make that joke work.
A lot of comedians I go and see who are doing new material, they do record the material, and then they say to me afterwards, I couldn't hear half of that because of your laugh. You'll have to do it again.
That's a great problem to have. I think I'll just put the recorder right near you next time. And whenever I'm feeling low, I'll just play it.
Well, you're very kind. That's lovely. Let's talk more about your the competitions that you went in for. You were a finalist in the Funny Women competition in 2018, and also runner-up in the Leicester Square New Comedian competition in 2019. Can you describe those experiences for me? Because it must be wonderful to get so far.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it puts you in front of people in the industry, and that's great. Yeah. So the Funny Women one, I was only a year in.
Wow.
So I didn't really understand how amazing it was, because I just started doing stand-up and I'd just done this competition, and I think it was only until afterwards that I realised that was a great achievement to do that. But I guess, and then after that, I didn't do well in any competitions for ages.
Wow.
And I was like, what's going on? I did this one and I was a finalist, and you start to decide that you're at a certain level, which is bullshit, because you're only, that was only 5 minutes of material. You've got to keep producing good material over and over again and be consistent. And when you're that early on, like I was lucky in that competition, I just had, what were there, three stages or 4 stages to it, so you only have to be good 4 times in order to get to the level, to the final. And so I think I just luckily had 4 good gigs in that competition and ended up where I was. But experience wise, I probably shouldn't have been there, because I hadn't been doing it as long as some people that were in that competition. And then you realize afterwards, like, to be a great comedian, you've got to be good at 95% of your gigs. You can't have one, it can't. And at that time it was so up and down, because I didn't know what I was doing. Like when it went well, I didn't know why it had gone well, and when it went bad, I didn't know. And I'm learning even now, still just learning how what that means and how to make sure it doesn't, and how to craft things better. And so it's not so much of a hit and miss.
Again, it's all down to experience, isn't it? The more you do, and I think you have to have difficult gigs to make yourself a better comedian, to experience the good and the bad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is horrible at the time. But it's all, and but then it's how you react to it, isn't it? I think sometimes I can come away from a bad gig just feeling so awful that I then don't learn the right lessons from it. Right. So you need to have had enough experience to criticize yourself in a kind way and go, okay, that gig wasn't great, but maybe this was an aspect, maybe that was an aspect, and maybe this joke you could just change and move it around and then try it again. But don't freak out. I'll just freak out and be like, I should quit. I'm terrible. And you're going too far the other way, and there's no helpful things that you can take away from that if you're just freaking out. So I think that you have to get used to, and that comes from having a thicker skin and not feeling totally distraught each time.
Fascinated. Whenever I've seen you always appear to be absolutely fearless and extremely funny on stage. Do you suffer from any nerves before you go on stage, and how do you cope with them?
I don't know whether to dispel your myth or not about leaving.
Please don't.
Yeah, no nerves at all. I feel so confident. I'm just having a nap in the green room before I go on.
I believe everything you tell me.
No, I get anxiety for sure.
Right.
For sure. But it gets better, and the gigging is, as soon as I'm on stage, I feel very calm and relaxed. I feel at ease.
Yeah.
But it's everything before that.
I remember seeing you only last year, Leicester Comedy Festival, and we were at the front of the queue, and we didn't know where to go to the venue, and you were in the bar where the stage was, and I've never seen anybody look so happy or excited.
Really?
And it was like a combination of nerves and happiness.
Yeah, it's all
and
just pumping through
me. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I've seen you twice at Edinburgh. I go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I'm very lucky to go. It's my holiday. I go there every year. I go for a week, and I see up to about 50 shows. I need holiday when I come back.
Oh my God, yeah.
But it's just the best.
Do you have to have a timetable?
I've got an Excel spreadsheet. I love doing it. I'm very sad. All the shows.
No, but I think that's how you have to do Edinburgh as an audience member. Otherwise, you'll just see a show and then miss another one, and then you'll have just not achieved
everything. It's impossible. Yeah. What was your first Edinburgh festival like, and what year was it? What were you doing?
It was doing the cabaret.
Right.
So that was the first year I went to Edinburgh. I hadn't even, I want to say 2013.
Right.
Yeah. And at that point in the cabaret, we had a 5-piece band with the show.
Nice.
Because we didn't understand maths.
Right.
And if you have 7 people doing a free Fringe show, you will make £0 once you've paid for everything. But obviously it was the whole spirit of Edinburgh.
Of course,
and we just fell in love with it. Neither of us, me and the girl that Rachel that I did the cabaret with, we'd never been even as audience members, and then coming with this show and this band, and it was absolute chaos. Like, we had to move our venue.
Right.
Like, there was a flood in one of them, then there was like a fire. It was some religious experience.
Yeah.
And every time we had to move venue, we had to cart, 5 instruments, drum kit, like across Edinburgh in the rain. I mean, what were we thinking?
Nightmare.
It was a nightmare, but you don't think it's a nightmare at the time. You just think it's wonderful and fun and exciting.
So you were experiencing all this buzz like I was. When you step off the train, the atmosphere just hits you.
Yeah.
When did you do your first solo show?
Solo show? Well, I haven't done one as stand-up.
So the latest one, Smut.
That was supposed to go to Edinburgh.
Would have been to Edinburgh, because I'm just having a read here of my next question, because I've seen many of your shows. Hoo-Ha, of course, in 2018 was with Stephen Trumbull.
Yes, that was a split hour.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, so we met during the Max Turner competition,
right,
which he had won,
right,
and I was in the final of. So we reconciled our differences and decided to do a show together. He approached me and was like,
brilliant.
Yeah, do you want to do something together? And I think our comedy would work well together. Because I don't know, have you seen, because you've seen Hoo-Ha. He's like
I
massive,
also saw
high
him at
energy.
the Amused Moose final as well. He was in that.
Yeah, that was the year we were doing Hoo-Ha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we thought, that would be good. Like me, just like dead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's
vaginas,
yeah,
and then he's like,
it worked really well. Yeah.
So we thought that would be fun. Plus, he's incredible at flyering.
Yeah.
I was like, come see the show. I don't think it's very good. I'm not very good at comedy. But just see this thing.
I've got a wonderful picture of me and you on the Royal Mile where it's raining, I'm looking like a drowned rat, and I saw you grinning, and you handed me a flyer, and I said, "Oh, hello, can I have a photo, please?" And you were both grinning.
Did I sell the show?
Yeah, you were brilliant here. And I went, "Oh, I'm going." Yeah, I went on that because I'd seen you before. But I thought to myself, I'm sure she's playing Edinburgh, and of course when I saw you, I was delighted, and I went. It was wonderful. So I saw that, and then I saw you as part of the Comedy Reserve in the Pleasance.
Yeah.
That was 2019, and that was with was it Josh Jones? Was one of them? Was
Josh Jones? Yeah. He's lovely.
Yeah.
And Mo Omar.
Mo Omar, of course,
and Mamoon Elegab.
That's right, yeah. And you each did 15 minutes.
Yeah. That was great. It's an amazing experience for anyone that is at the level that I was at, because they pay for your Edinburgh experience. They put you up in a flat, you all stay together, and then you have this showcase of your talent, basically. And I mean, it was a tough gig at times, I would say, because I think a lot of the audience are expecting, like on the flyer it says Joe Lycett did it, and
they got all these
Jack
big
White. And then you're like, but they did it when they were shit like us.
It's now
please
my turn.
Lower your expectations. We're still learning. Sometimes they're a bit like,
Well, all I can say to that was there was 3 people with me, 3 very good friends of mine, and I recommended that show based on you. And they loved it. They thought you were the best thing on it.
That's nice.
And then, of course, I have seen Smut, the work in progress hour-long show. So you've had a 15-minute segment there, and you've had a 20-minute segment with Hoo Ha, 25 minutes. So this is now the hour-long first solo show, which I saw at Leicester last year, and you've done also as well this year online.
Yes. Yeah.
So hopefully when Edinburgh comes back, we will see you there, and I'll be in the front row.
I mean, please, because with social distancing, there'll only be me and you allowed in there. So. I need someone that's got a good laugh.
Well, I'm here for you. I'm here, of course. There's a very funny story. I went one year, and there's a comedian who shall remain nameless. Walked out into this little tiny room, and there was myself, my friend, and a drunken Scotsman in the front row. He was in the front row and we were in the middle, and the comedian bounded out, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, there's only 3 of you there. It's all very good of you. Thank you so much for coming along. Let me buy you a drink." And the bloke in the front row went, "No, I've paid me £6. I want the hour."
Oh my God.
So he had to do the hour-long show. The show must go on. So even if it is just me and you, which it won't be, I'll tell you now.
That is tough. That is tough. But I'll be at the Pleasance, because
the Pleasance is
the
wonderful.
Other thing with the Reserve is that you then get a slot at the Pleasance the next year.
So you'll be in the Pleasance when it comes back.
Yeah, I mean, it was
brilliant.
all set. I was going to be in Bunker 1.
Right.
7 or something. Can't really remember. I've blocked it all out so I don't get too depressed about it not happening.
I will be there because...
but hopefully it'll just, whenever it comes back, it'll just be the same.
The Pleasance Courtyard is one of my most favourite places in the world.
Yeah, really, it's so great. I saw so many shows there last year. Yeah,
I'll be there.
Great for comedy.
Can you describe your writing process as opposed to remembering the stuff? How do you go about writing an idea? Do you think of it straight away and write it down? Do you try and create things? How do you go about writing?
Usually I'll think of something and then write it in my notes on my phone.
Right.
And then at another stage, I'll write it in a notebook or on my computer. At some point, I'll tell it to my boyfriend, who will tell me that it's not funny, usually.
He's your number one fan, I would guess.
He is sick of it. He's sick to death.
I'm sure that's not true.
But I mean, because at the beginning you have to do the bringer gigs.
Right.
He had to come to so many gigs.
Yeah.
That I think, put him off the whole thing. And now when I do a good gig...
I've been the bringer every time. They always ask me to go along, and I'm sick of hearing half of it, I tell you.
Well, that's the thing, because you're bringing someone to what a lot of the time will be a shit gig, because
that's not
everybody there
true,
is just starting, which is why it's a bringer gig. And it goes on for hours. They've gone till midnight, and he's just like scowling at me. Like, and you lose so many friends, because once I ran out of sympathy from him, I had to use other friends. And it's awful, because you don't actually want them to see you when you're at that stage. You want, because then they just decide that you're shit at comedy. Like, no, I'm good. I just needed to do some practice. But that's the thing about comedy. You have to practice in front of people, which is cruel.
I tell you, you've got my utmost respect, because it is the hardest thing in the world to do. I call my blog is an enthuse. That's what I want it to be. My brother put a very kind testimonial in it for me. And he says Richie's blog is more of an enthuse than a review or a diary or a report.
Yeah, that's what's so lovely though. You just love it, and that's so clear, and it's so nice. That's why a lot of comedy scene is lovely, because when there are people like you that go to lots of gigs, it really it's nice to have that with audience as well, because we have that with other comedians.
Time, and so obviously with my laugh, it's very, very rare that I sit in silence.
And if you do, we know that it's a really bad joke.
What's wrong?
It's like, wrong. What? Rich didn't even laugh. Oh my God. Get rid of it. Get rid of it.
Yeah. You're also part of the stand-up sketch show, which is back on ITV too.
Yeah.
How does appearing on TV differ from live stand-up?
I mean, not a lot. Go on.
I was just going to say, does it differ?
Well, with stand-up sketch, they film. It's in two sections. So you film the live bit where you're just on stage doing your stand-up, which they film with a live audience. So I did the last series, and that had a proper live audience because it was pre. COVID. So that is basically like a normal gig. They're just filming it.
Yeah.
But the bit that differs is because they need to get a clean audio of it, you have to record your set without an audience before the live show to silence.
So
it's just the film crew and you on stage doing 20 minutes, dying on your ass. And then so that they can hear it, like they're not allowed to laugh, so that they can hear nothing goes over the top of what you're saying.
Wow.
So that's pretty excruciating. But because I'd done it the first time, then when I came to the other series, the most recent one, I was prepared. And also because it was in the middle of the pandemic, so we'd all been doing a lot of Zoom gigs, which are very similar to that, where there's just silence and you learn to just find your own confidence without having that laughter to reassure you. So I think I found it easier the second time because of that. But then the other part of it is the sketch part, which I just loved. It was so much fun to just be being silly and to be acting out, a story, a joke that you'd created, and seeing it come to life, and also working with other comedians and being in their scenes. There's
I recognise
much more
a lot playing the different parts.
And that's what's nice about the show. Everyone makes little cameos in each other's things, and there's a nice collaborative feel. Whereas obviously with stand-up, you're very, very solitary. It's just you on the stage, and it can feel quite competitive because of that. Whereas with something like this, it felt more just friendly and fun.
Well, it's a deserved hit, and I absolutely love it. So I hope to see a lot more of it on TV. It's a wonderful show. Do you have any ambitions as a comedian? Would you like your own TV show? Would you like to play the O2? I mean, these are obviously
no, I'd hate to play the O2. I will turn it down.
Oh, right. Yeah. So obviously, I don't know whether I like that question myself.
I kind of, I'm still like quite early on, so I'm kind of like, any opportunities that I get, I take, and I just want to see where my career goes. I mean, I definitely feel like since doing stand-up sketch that I really enjoy the sketch side of it, and that you've written something and it's come to life. So during this lockdown, I've done loads of sitcom writing courses, and I've sort of started to think about maybe doing that and trying to push that side of it, because I do really like the acting and the working together. So I'm more open to that than I was before. So that would be great. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody says that. I'd love to have my own sitcom.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Really good. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
I really have admired Amy Schumer's rise. I think because she was so famous, she broke into my kind of sphere before I even was doing stand-up comedy, if you see what I mean. Because once you're in the stand-up comedy world, you know a lot more comedians and different levels of comedian and from all around the world. But I think when you're just living your life, not many stand-ups really weren't coming into my brain. But I loved Amy Schumer's rise because she had that sketch show as well, Inside Amy Schumer. That I loved. Superb. And I just and I felt like she was the first comedian I'd seen that I could see myself being. Like that whole talking about sex and being confident and being self-deprecating, but not in the way that I'd seen it so much in comedy. But because she was like owning it, and I just I thought she was amazing. I love Sarah Silverman as well.
Yeah. You love who? Sorry.
Great. Sarah Silverman.
Oh, she's superb as well. Yeah. Really great. The reason why I ask it is that in my blog there's a section called "The Ones That Got Away," and I've written about 25 comedians who I would love to have seen, who have either passed on or I just haven't had a chance to see. And in there's the likes of Dave Allen, Mike Reed, Norman Wisdom, Morecambe and Wise. They're all 70s, 80s ones, but the memories that they have for me as well. It's wonderful that comedians always pinpoint particular acts that have inspired them, and it's fascinating to listen to that answer.
I mean, and I guess what you mean about seeing people that have gone is that you won't be able to see them live. So you must love that live element, because what worries me now is that that's gonna go.
Well, I'm just moving on to that because obviously 2020 has been a very strange year for everybody, and now and into now 2021. How have you found online gigs as opposed to live gigs, and what do you think the future is of comedy?
God, I wish I knew.
Do you like doing online gigs?
I can't sit here and lie to you, Richard. No, I don't really like them, to be honest. It's just that you learn your craft, don't you? You go and get all your hours in, and you feel like you're understanding how to do your job. And then this happened, and it was like everybody was back to square one. Suddenly we were online, and then suddenly jokes that I had, like, you know, bankers that I would use all the time just weren't working online, and I couldn't figure out why. And, you know, you just don't get that buzz from it that you do being on stage. And there's something about you having a microphone and you being there and the audience being there, and I don't know, I just love that. And it's taken me a while to kind of figure out the Zoom gig. I still haven't figured it out, I don't think. I see a friend of mine, Esther Manito, and she's done so many Zoom gigs.
She's coming on here. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
she's great. She's great, and we've worked together a lot over the year, writing and doing sketches and stuff. But she's just figured them out, and she can just smash a Zoom gig. And I think that's actually quite rare at the moment. I think everyone's a bit like me, just sort of like a bit hit and miss with them.
Yeah.
But there can be some really lovely things. I mean, the fact that people are just in their living rooms and it's quite informal. There's this really chatty kind of intimate feeling when people turn their cameras on. That's the other thing. If they're just a blank screen, then it's really hard to know whether anyone's enjoying themselves or if anyone's even looking at you.
I totally agree with you. I think it's the best substitute. If there was no comedy at all, I don't know how I'd have got through lockdown personally. So it's a very good substitute, but for me, you can't beat live, you know, because you never know what's going to happen with live. That's the magical thing. The first 3 or 4 gigs I watched online, there was no audio, so I was just sitting here laughing at these 4 walls. I thought I was going to be taken away. The neighbours were knocking on the
Really.
And then, of course, the audio came on, and it was better. But no, you can't. I love. I really miss going to a comedy club on a Saturday night or a weekend and just really enjoying myself.
It's the whole event, isn't it? It's going.
It is. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
No.
That's another question I think I'm going to drop. Every one of them said no.
Really? I think you just get so sick of them because you have to do so many. Like when you first start, you're just gigging all the time. You're like, on your day off, you're like, I can't think of anything worse. Going somewhere and laughing. Disgusting.
Even I can't do 7 nights a week. I tell you, I'm still doing my best. But
no. But it is nice to go and watch Friends.
Yes.
Like when everyone's getting ready for Edinburgh. That was nice. Going to see other people's work in progress shows, because it's also like you can just sit and enjoy yourself and not be worried about anything that you're going to do. And it's really nice to see how everyone's show is developing, and they're all so different as well. So you feel, I think, less like we're all competing or anything. It's like everyone's got completely different ideas about what they want to do in their show, and that's great and interesting. And
if you're on a bill of acts, do you stay and watch all the acts? I love your honesty.
It depends. I mean, I love my dog, and I often just want to get home and be with her.
You're not alone, I tell you what. Just before we go, and I've so much enjoyed this, is there anything else you would like to say? Have you got any online gigs? I know you've got your podcast with Esther Manito, the Clueless podcast.
That's not actually a podcast.
No.
It's a online show that you can just watch when we do it or afterwards. We should have made a podcast out of it. You're right.
I don't know technology. I
don't
know the phrase.
What is a podcast? I know. We are creating a podcast at the moment, but we haven't released it yet.
Right.
So I don't want to say. Should I say?
Well, no, it's up to you.
It probably will be out by the time this is out. So it's called Ghastly Women.
Fantastic
and
title.
About horrible women throughout history and today.
Brilliant. And where can people find you on the socials?
So Instagram is mainly how I let people know what I'm doing. So that is at Lily Phillips Comedy.
Right.
I've also got a Facebook page, and I've got a website that I made, but I haven't looked at it in about 6 months.
Right.
But it was too depressing. There was nothing. It was like, what's Lily up to? Nothing. She's staring at the wall. So I think the last thing I put up was that I was going to Edinburgh, and this was my show that I was doing, and it had my preview dates. And then I just closed it down. Well, but it is still there.
I, for one, will come and see you definitely at Edinburgh when you're doing your hour, because I think you're an enormous talent. I really do. I've said this before to you. Whenever I see you, you always make me laugh out loud, and I wish you every success. I really do.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much for doing this. And
thanks
all the
for
very
having
best
me.
to
I
you.
really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.